All right, this is Wade Major with the IGN Digigods, and we have Tim Cogshell with us today. Tim, say hey.
Hello, everybody. Sitting in for Mark.
Tim is sitting in for Mark for the next couple of weeks, this week and next week, because Mark, with all due apologies to our listeners, has been bombarded over at his day job at E! Entertainment with a massive Academy Award-related project that has him working subhuman hours. He is like a drone somewhere underground, a drone ant, and he's just burning through the clock. So
all for our Academy Award enjoyment.
All for our Academy Award enjoyment. So Mark is actually out of commission for a couple of weeks, but after the Oscars, I'm sure we will have plenty of great stories from him. In the meantime, that brings us to our Oscar pool. Anybody who's been on our Facebook page knows that we have our first ever Oscar pool. So go on over there and read up about it. Otherwise, go to www.funofficepools.com and register. And the group is The Digigods. And you got to be accurate on this. It's capital T-H-E space capital D lowercase I-G-I capital G lowercase O-D-S. So the T and the D and the G are all capitalized, and that will get you the group. The password, all lowercase, Lars von Trier, no spaces. So go on over to the Digigods at funofficepools.com, password Lars von Trier, all lowercase, and register for the Oscar pool. And the swag is already getting pretty fantastic. We are going to be giving away a Blu-ray of Boyhood, a Blu-ray of the Frank Darabont collection, which includes, it's brand new, which includes Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, and The Majestic. And then we also have a bunch of Olive titles, some amazingly cool classic Olive titles, which we will fill in on a future show as well and let you know as those all arrive. So far that is the swag, and we're trying to get some more for the winner of the Oscar office pool. In the meantime, Tim and I, we just got done doing our Film Week
The big
Oscar
Film
show.
Week Oscar show.
The big Film Week Oscar show at the Egyptian, where we all get up on stage with the rest of our colleagues and we
talk about these movies that are coming up. Boyhood seems to have been a big favorite in the audience. Imitation Game seems to have been a big favorite in the audience.
Birdman.
Birdman is a big favorite. Well, probably going to be my pick.
But no runaway favorite among. I mean, the audience. Larry Mantle, who is our host on Film Week and Air Talk. Larry always kind of throws it after we ramble about some category. He throws it to the audience and by applause sees if there's a favorite. Did it feel like there was any favorite this year?
The applause was so even across all of these films, and I think it's been that way this season.
Yeah.
A lot of these films are in the running. I have my favorites. I think I know what's going to happen, but I think that nobody out there will be really, really, really greatly disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. It just feels like one of the most even years. I think Birdman's still going to win. I think it's running the table on all the Guild Awards.
Yeah, DG8 NRE2 won last night, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, and it won the Producers Guild, won SAG, got the Ensemble Award from SAG. So it seems to be the odds-on favorite with all of the crafts. But we shall see. Stranger things have happened. If it does win, and I made this point, if it does win, it will be the first Best Picture winner since 1980. 34 years that did not get a nomination for editing, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's very, very sort of strange. Sometimes we'll see those situations where a Best Picture is nominated and the director of that film is not. I think we see that this year. Selma nominated, Ava not nominated. Yeah. But editing is such an integral part to what goes on.
But it's only
in the way a movie plays.
It's invisible in Birdman. That's what I think the problem is.
Well, those long takes. But again, there's editing that's going on in that film.
Well, and full disclosure, the editors of the film, Steve Marioni and Doug Kreis, are actually very close friends of my wife. They all worked on this little movie Clock Watchers a million years ago together.
Yeah, the sisters.
By the Sprecher sisters. Yeah, that's where they all met. Everybody kind of met on that little movie, and it's they worked hard. Doug was the first editor on, and then Steve came on. And joined him, and Steve, of course, won an Oscar for Traffic. And I think the editing achievement there is that you don't notice the edits.
That it is, in fact, invisible, which is what editing in the best circumstances ought to be. There are times when editing is important, when it's a thing that happens in a film that's an interesting thing to watch. But in this film... Yeah. The way this film plays out with those long takes that he does, you think that there's no editing going on. Believe me, that's art, that's craft.
It is. Well, let's get into covering some DVDs. We've got a lot of stuff piled up. It is February, which means it's Black History Month.
Yeah.
And
Black History Month.
And so certain titles get thrown our way, some of them better than others. Some of them we'd rather not have associated with Black History Month, but nonetheless, there they are. And a little bit ironic with all the talk about Selma not getting the nominations that people felt that it was due. Funny that this now all kind of arrives in Black History Month.
It is sort of an interesting thing. One of the films here for Black History Month that I'm looking at is King, the Paul Winfield, Cicely Tyson film, 1978, which I watched broadcast on television in 1978,
and it's now on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because until Selma, that was the only... You would have thought that we'd have made 10 or 12 Martin Luther King biopics by now, right?
Well, and this film is in fact called King.
Yeah.
So it is a biopic, so to speak, about MLK, as opposed to Selma, which we do have to remind people all the time, is not a biopic about Dr. Martin Luther King. It's about this very particular set of events. Of course, he's pivotal in it, but he's not. This film does have the benefit that there are, in fact, some actual words that Dr. King spoke in this film because they were still licensing bit by bit little chunks of the speeches. Ava DuVernay did not have that benefit.
No, but she did a hell of a job writing some stuff that sounds like it. Anyway, so The King is on Blu-ray, and then we also have a thing called Addicted, based on the bestseller by Zane. I don't know who Zane is, Tim.
Zane is the E.L. James of black literature.
Got it.
E.L. James is the person who wrote 50 Shades of Grey. If you think 50 Shades of Grey is a sort of a sexy little book, read some of the stuff that Zane there has written.
These are some of the most beautiful people I think I have ever seen in my entire life.
Oh, yeah.
This is just...
You got yourself a whole group of absolutely gorgeous people here. Look, there's a following for these films and the books that are made from these films. They usually involve menage a trois and things like that. Among very, very lovely black folks. This is directed by Billy Woodruff, who's sort of a noted director in this genre of film.
Awesome. And then we've got. I'll let you.
I see here that you have Through a Lens Darkly, this documentary that came out not too terribly long ago, a film by Thomas Allen Harris. It's a really, really lovely film. A documentary about the history of photography across the years that's related to African Americans. This is our little African American section here. It's a lovely, lovely film that completely reshapes the way we think about black folks as photographers and as subjects of photography. There is a daguerreotype in this movie taken by a black man of John Brown, of the abolitionist John Brown. It's an absolutely extraordinary picture. Just about everyone listening has seen this photograph.
And daguerreotypes, we should point out, is like the cave painting version of photography.
Yeah, just on a plate and all this kind of stuff. That picture of John Brown was taken by a black man in the late 1860s. So this is a really, really lovely movie. It's a little bit scattershot, but it's a history of things that we just don't know about. The way black folks have been captured in photography over the years has shaped so many things about the way we think about black people. And it hasn't always been flattering. This film sets some of that correct.
And then we've got a fantastic PBS release here, which is just really first rate. The African Americans Black in Latin America, with Henry Louis Gates Jr., who is just the work that he's been doing on PBS is just
Dr. Gates and those genealogies.
Scholarly. It's absolutely scholarly, and it's amazing. And it's sort of taking its cue from Roots, obviously, and taking it to a whole different level. I mean, really doing unbelievably great work as a historian and an ethnographer and all those things. And this is just wonderful. He basically here it's 10 hours on 4 discs. Really going into the entire history of black Central and South Americans, which is a history that we don't really pay much attention to, frankly.
We don't necessarily even think about the fact that there are black folks who consider themselves black, negro, in South America and Latin America. It's a really intriguing thing. And Dr. Gates is just a wonderful, wonderful sort of presence, a documentarian presence in these films, too. Not enough is said about just him on camera and the way he sort of eases people through these histories of their own lives.
No, he's just a wonderful presence and an invaluable part of that PBS family. I'm going to burn through some of these MHZ megahertz titles right now. The megahertz is they release these fantastic international mystery and crime and cop series from other countries. They've pioneered basically a niche all their own, and it's extraordinary. They're the only ones doing this. All these great TV series in non-English languages, Norwegian, Swedish, German, French, Spanish, Italian, and they find this stuff. And they put it out there. And we've got a whole bunch of new titles from them that I'll just go through real quickly here.
I love those movies.
It's great stuff. The Nicolas Le Floch series, we get Volume 2. This is episodes 7 through 10, which takes place in 18th century Paris, based on the best-selling novels of Jean-François Perrault. That is, if you caught the first release of that, it's great stuff.
The production design in those are just extraordinary.
Period detective work. It's really, really good. We've got Crime Scene Cleaner. Which I'm surprised that nobody's actually come up with in the United States. It's exactly what it is, and it's kind of icky, but sort of cool at the same time. This is a German series, and the guy in it, his name is Schotti. You can't get better than that name. Hi, I'm Schotti, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to clean the blood and the guts off your crime scene. This is typically German, so it's got kind of a wickedly dark, creepy edge to it. But it's technically a comedy, although I suspect the Germans probably find it a lot funnier than we do. And then we've got set 1 of Marie's Mind for Murder. This is kind of like Murder, She Wrote in German, except she's not old and she's kind of attractive. And she's also not a writer. So it's not really like Murder, She Wrote. But yeah. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, that's 10 episodes here. That's a good German detective bit. Then we've got a couple of sets, set 1 and set 2 of Unit 1, which is...
I love that series.
Unit 1?
Yeah, the Unit series. Yeah, I love that series. Yeah.
It's really, really good. This was an International Emmy Award winner, and it actually... this is Danish. And something about Danish, my Scandinavian friends always like to joke about Danish, that Norwegian and Swedish are languages and Danish is a throat disease. I'm sure.
There's a wonderful little Danish film that just opened here today. I think it's called The Loft, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, it might be.
Yeah. It just opened this
week. We have
James Marsden adaptation. Yeah.
We have Danish listeners to this show.
Eric Van Looy directed that film. Yeah, directed it twice. Directed it once. There and then once for us. Good work. Well,
we have Danish listeners to this show, and I would love for them to write in and tell us, their feelings about Unit 1. It's certainly it's really cool. It just something about things that take place.
Mads Mikkelsen is in that series, so anything that Mads is in is okay with me.
Anything that and anything that takes place in Scandinavia always feels more dire. It always feels like someone's going to freeze to death or starve to death.
If nothing else happens, somebody might freeze.
It's just a feeling I always have. Then we've also talked previously about the Don Matteo series. We got a couple more on that, sets 7 and 8. This is just a fabulous Italian show that it's just got a lot of style and it got a lot of great dialogue, really, really kind of fun settings. So Don Matteo. And then... let's see, getting down here, we've got In the Face of Crime. In the Face of Crime is a little bit kind of unusual for the style of a lot of previous stuff. As you can see, we have a German emphasis here with the megahertz titles, and this is also a German series. Like the Crime Scene Cleaner is kind of dark comedy. This one is... It's got a character intensity that the others don't necessarily have. The lead character here, his name is Marek Gorski. Interesting character because he's got a Russian Jewish background, and they play a lot with his kind of his sense of identity.
It's kind of like a middle 2000 series from Germany, like 2009 or 10 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. That In the Face of Crime, I'm sure
could
it is.
Could be. Yeah. Let me double check the
because I remember seeing that, but interesting.
Yeah, I don't have a note for the date, but all of these are fairly recent series. We also have previously we'd mentioned The Inspector in the Sea. We now have season 2 of that. These are based on the novels of Mari Jungstedt. This is another German show. Good, not quite on the same caliber as some of the others. Then we have season 1 of Johan Falk, Johan, Johan Falk. And this is a really, really, really cool concept. This is a Swedish show with a guy who used to be part of Europol. And now he is becoming kind of an organized crime guy. He's got a whole new focus in his career, and there's really, it takes some very interesting twists and turns. And I'm dying to see some of the subsequent series, some of the subsequent seasons. Really, really interesting concept. It's a little bit like certain American shows that have what are some of them? The Wire might come to mind, where you feel like they're going somewhere, but you don't know where they're quite leading you. You know, you're in a
world, you're in a community.
Yeah. And then
the Eagle, my goodness.
And then seasons 2 and 3 of The Eagle, which has one of the coolest lead characters of any of these shows. Really just first-rate stuff. This is a Danish show as well, so more of that throat disease language, but really, really cool concept. The Eagle, of course, is the nickname of the lead character, who has his name is Hallgrimsson, and he just has this knack. He just knows things. He's just got like a second sense. Or a sixth sense, as they might say. So anyway, that's the whole new lineup from Megahertz, and it just continues to be one of the coolest lines out there. And then, real quickly, we've got let's get into some classic movies. We've got some of our DVD-R stuff from Warner Archive. I'll just name 4 of these really fast. Terry Thomas. I want to make mention of Terry Thomas because
the lovely Terry Thomas.
Because Johnny Depp recently just tanked in Mordecai.
Yeah.
And
doing a very bad version of Terry Thomas.
An incredibly bad version of Terry Thomas. But Terry Thomas is really, really funny. And there's an MGM movie called Kill or Cure that Terry Thomas starred in, which is now part of the Warner Library, fortunately. And this is just a wonderful old Terry Thomas, just a really silly Terry Thomas comedy. And the whole thing takes place in a spa. And it doesn't really matter what it's about. It's just Terry Thomas in a spa should make you laugh. It's just very, very funny, and lots of physical humor, and Terry Thomas just being the usual twit that he is. He just can't handle
something about that gap.
The machines, the diastema, I know. It's just the machines they put him in, it's really funny. And then we have a 4-film collection called Brown and Carney. This is a collection of 4 films from a comedy team that everybody's kind of forgotten about. They were an RKO team. Never really got the traction of Abbott Costello or any of those guys, but they're still really, really funny. And we are, of course, talking about Wally Brown and Alan Carney. And the movies are The Adventures of a Rookie, Rookies in Burma, Girl Rush, and Genius at Work. Probably worth a rental at the very least, I would say. It's, again, from Warner Archive, so you can find it by going to warnerarchive.com. But a lot of fun appearances here. You get Bela Lugosi shows up in Genius at Work, and a few other interesting little noteworthy cameos from other actors of the era. So there's some good stuff here. And then New Faces of 1937 is one of these bizarre cavalcades of just throwing a lot of talent into a movie. It's one of these weird things the studios used to do where they'd show off a lot of their new faces, and they'd sometimes make them into musical reviews and stuff like this. But they want you to know who's there in 1937 to look for in other movies. And it was a promotional tool back then. And the only interesting thing here is that Milton Berle is one of them.
Yeah, you got Milton Berle walking around there and a few people. Those things were always a lot of fun. I remember loving those.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, Milton Berle's the only person there that we would recognize now.
Yeah, well, all these people in 1937 were meant to be famous.
And Milton Berle became famous, and the rest of them vanished. And then also an RKO double feature, Old Man Rhythm and To Beat the Band. A couple of old musicals, nothing really spectacular here, but Betty Grable shows up at one point, and you get a few other faces that are somewhat, Charles Buddy Rogers and a few others that are somewhat familiar. So that's a nice little dose of nostalgia from the Warner Archive collection.
With 50 Shades of Grey coming out next Friday or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So everybody that's ever made a sexy film, every studio that's ever made a film with a little bit of sex in it has put one out. We have one here with 7 films in it, a little bit of sexy. You got Bear Witness, which is an interesting little film that I think I remember with Daniel Baldwin in it. A Craig Sheffer film with Cheryl Lee. Remember Cheryl Lee?
Oh my gosh!
Called Bliss with Terrence Stamp, the wonderful Terrence Stamp in that film, and a few of them, Youth Without Youth, of course, the wonderful Francis Ford Coppola film with Tim Roth from a couple of years ago. So, a little bit of sexy that they're working with right there.
And Cheryl Lee is gonna show up again in the new Twin Peaks series, I'm sure.
One hopes her and the Log Lady. Yeah. Those are who you want. Her and the Log Lady. Yeah. Mom's Mabley in a film called Amazing Grace. This was directed by Stan Latham. Stan happens to be a guy I know. Father of Sanaa Latham, the actress, the wonderful actress.
Right.
This movie goes back to 1974. Mom's Mabley, for those of you who have no idea who Mom's Mabley is, look, you know what? Go on YouTube, look her up. The funniest little old black lady you've ever seen in your life. You think Cat Stevens is funny?
No.
Hang out with Mom's Mabley for about 20 minutes.
For sure. All right, let's. Let me. Want to go through a lot of this because we haven't been able to get to a lot of this stuff in previous weeks. Hold on here. Let me dig in here from our 20th Century Fox Cinema Archives. We've got a whole bunch of triple features.
Ooh.
I'm going to roll through these super fast because there's no reason to do anything other than just make quick mention of them. These are all 3 film collections. Films just from the 20th Century Fox archives. They are part of the 20th Century Fox Cinema Archives line, which is all DVD-R. It's all DVD burns. And on this one, we got Beneath the 12-Mile Reef, Raiders from Beneath the Sea, and Down to the Sea in Ships. The latter one is really pretty interesting because it's got Richard Widmark, Lionel Barrymore, and Dean Stockwell in it. Really terrific cast. But there's your nautical theme. We've also got a bunch of Cisco Kid movies. The Cisco Kid, Return of the Cisco Kid and the Lady. Gotta love Cesar Romero. I mean, people that think Cesar Romero is just the Joker just don't understand.
Yeah, the depth and breadth of that man's career.
There was just some really fun stuff that he did. We got some girl stuff for those who want their beefcake and their pinup stuff in The Pleasure Seekers with Anne Margaret. Fantastic, never better. 3 Little Girls in Blue with June Haver. And Betty Grable in The Shocking Miss Pilgrim. Not really that shocking anymore, but it's Betty Grable.
Yeah. Anne Margaret in that first movie. She has a dancing scene in that movie. Yeah. Prepare yourself. That's all I want to say.
Fabulous. Red Skies of Montana, The Siege at Red River, and The Untamed are 3 kind of western-y things. The Untamed is more of an adventure. But this is, all action-adventure stuff, and there's really nothing that ties these things together other than just lots of action and adventure. Tyrone Power in Untamed is pretty great. It takes place in Africa, and beautiful photography. They call this, the tag here is Afracolossal. Would that fly today?
That's like an old advertising line from the 50s or something like that.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been in the room when some guy at the studio, they're all chomping on their cigars in a nice big smoke-filled room. What can we come up? Afracolossal.
Package them. You got a winner.
It's madness.
You got a winner.
And then we've got Frederick March and Lionel Barrymore in The Road to Glory. Great war film. Wife, Husband, and Friend, also with Warner Baxter and Loretta Young, and then Warner Baxter and Andrea Leeds in Earthbound. I'm going to go through these quickly as I can. Take Her, She's Mine, Sandra Dee and James Stewart movie. James Stewart also with Barbara Hale in Hit the Jackpot, and then James Stewart with Marlene Dietrich in No Highway in the Sky. These are all kind of minor James Stewart movies, but they're okay. The Foxes of Harrow is actually really, really good. Great performance there by Rex Harrison and Maureen O'Hara as the 2 leads. Both of them really, really wonderful and really good direction there by John Stahl. And then we've also got A Flea in Her Ear, which is Rex Harrison with Rosemary Harris. And then a kind of bizarre film called Staircase that I had never seen before. Rex Harrison and Richard Burton, who I had no idea had ever done a movie.
A movie with Rex Harrison.
With Stanley Donen directing it.
Stanley Donen, no.
And the weirdest part about this is that Dudley Moore did the music.
Oh, really? Well, what year is that from?
Good question. That's 60s sometime, but it's just like 69, 68. just utterly bizarre staircase. So that's a very strange but mildly funny film and a real novelty that you might want to check out, but with some warning. Then we've got Janet Gaynor and Charles Farrell in Change of Heart, Clifton Webb and Ginger Rogers in Dreamboat, and Ginger Rogers and Michael Rennie in Teenage Rebel. That's another fun triple feature. And then lastly, Loretta Young, Celeste Holm in Come to the Stable, Three Blind Mice with Loretta Young and Joel McRae, and Loretta Young again, and Tyrone Power, and Annabella in a really interesting film called Suez, which definitely worth checking out. Suez, it's maybe one of the few films directed by Alan Dwan, who did a lot of great kind of adventure movies. Yeah. Really interesting, set obviously against the backdrop of the Suez Canal and all that crazy drama.
Yeah, I actually think it's really funny that film with Celeste Holm and Loretta Young.
Yeah.
When I was a real little kid, I used to think Celeste Holm and Loretta Young were the same person.
Oh, that's interesting.
With the eyes and all that, and I would see them. They have a very particular self-presentation. Yeah, but
I never quite realized.
Interesting.
That is. I'm going to go search photos for the rest of the day.
I'm sitting here and I see that I have you have a copy of Nas DVD documentary about Nas. Nas, Time is Illmatic. It has been more than 20 years, just about a little bit more than 20 years since Nas's groundbreaking album Illmatic came out.
That's amazing.
It was the record that really changed the direction of hip hop.
Has it been that long?
20 years. 20 years after the release of Nas's landmark debut album Illmatic. It's just an extraordinary thing. He's still around, still doing some really, really great music, but he changed the direction of hip hop with that film. That would probably be pretty interesting. I'm going to check that out.
Wow.
David Duchovny and Minnie Driver in Return to Me. I remember when this movie came out. And I was excited about it at the time. It turned out not to be that great of a film. Directed, though, by the very, very funny Bonnie Hunt.
Bonnie. I first saw Bonnie Hunt when she was when they had a Second City troupe in
Second
L.A.
City, yeah.
And she would do these improv bits there. This was before she was on TV or anything. You knew she was going to go somewhere. It was amazing. She would do, and I'm trying to remember how the improv game worked because it was amazing. They would clue the audience. She'd go off stage, and the audience would come in. And I saw her do this 3 or 4 times, and it always amazed me. I always thought there was some trick to it. And the audience would be cued with certain words, and she had to come out and sort of tell a story and guess what words the audience had been given, and they would sort of applause. And the level of applause, it was like a hot cold thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember all the details, but it was amazing. You would think she's never going to figure this out. Like he told us, it takes place in Nebraska. And she would come out and go, there's a place I've always wanted to go. It might be, sort of northish, and then there'd be a little bit of applause. Or maybe south, more applause, right? It was one of these weird things. Somehow, damn it, I don't know how, but she nailed it. She was so sharp and made it funny and fun.
Well, Bonnie Hunt she's always been that sort of like second banana in movies.
Yeah.
The girlfriend.
Yeah.
Sleepless in Seattle. I think she's the girl. So she's always been that. I never really thought of her as sort of a director type, but she did a really, really great job there. I see here that you have on Blu-ray.
Yeah,
is this the first time that Henry V?
That's the first time that's been on Blu-ray.
That's extraordinary. 1989. Of course, Kenneth Branagh's adaptation of Henry V, using just about all of the text, if I'm not mistaken. It's really, really a great film.
I love this most for the Patrick Doyle score, which I think is one of the great all-time scores ever written. It's just, he spent like no money making this movie. I mean, there's a reason why the English army consists of 4 or 5 guys kind of crammed in the frame and a little bit of sound effects making you feel like there's more of an army because they didn't have the money.
The great Paul Scofield, the great Derek Jacobi, and Ian Holm.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah. And Christian Bale is in this too.
I'd forgotten about that completely.
He had just done Empire of the Sun for Spielberg. Like a year or two earlier.
John Malkovich,
and he has like just 1 or 2 scenes in this thing, but it's Christian Bale right there.
Yeah, early Christian Bale.
Yeah.
I see that we have a Frank Sinatra film, Edward G. Robinson and Frank Sinatra. I completely forgot about this film.
Yeah.
A Hole in the Head.
It's a good movie.
Eleanor Park, it's a fun movie. I remember this being a lot of fun, a little sort of late. Nelson Riddle, music by Nelson Riddle. Can't go wrong with that, that's for sure. And then, of course, we have the wonderful Pork Chop Hill, Gregory Peck, and this extraordinary Lou Milestone film. The art cover on this DVD I really love too. It's that old
Blu-ray,
school Blu-ray, old school
it is
cover art for this thing is just great. It's like Gregory Peck and Pork Chop Hill. You definitely want to check that one out.
Sweet. And also on DVD-R, here's a whole bunch more DVD-R releases from the MGM Limited Edition collection. Now, this, of course, comes from 20th Century Fox as well. This is part MGM distributes through Fox. So these are they obviously have the 20th Century Fox Cinema Archives, and this is the MGM end of that particular production line. These are the MGM Limited Edition collection. A lot of these have been out previously and went out of print, and thank goodness they're back. Most importantly, The Knack and How to Get It, one of my all-time favorite films.
All-time favorite films.
Gosh,
yeah.
It's so good.
Very young Richard Lester.
Richard Lester just basically changing the face of cinema forever.
Yeah.
I mean, we would not have Wes Anderson if not for Richard Lester.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, this is just fantastic. Michael Crawford, young Michael Crawford.
Michael Crawford, yeah.
Rita Tushingham. Always loved her name.
Yes.
Isn't it the greatest name?
Incredibly appropriate, too.
Mr. Tight Trousers, Mr. Tight Trousers. John Barry wrote one of his most beloved scores in this, and this was one of the films that when I taught that class that I brought you in as a guest, my film history class over there, those poor college students that had me as a professor, I showed them this, and I thought they're gonna love this. It's like 60s and it's mod and it's cool. And they just looked at it, and then they just looked at me like, who are you, and why did you show this to us? And I just thought, I'm so old. How do you not understand how cool this is?
Film critics don't get old.
Anyway, also in the MGM Limited Edition collection, the story of Adele H, or Adele H, the Francois Truffaut film starring Isabelle Adjani as Victor Hugo's daughter. Great movie. Really a great movie. Great performance by Adjani. Incredible, tragic story. The absolutely ridiculous Mars Needs Women, starring Tommy Kirk and Yvonne Craig. The only reason to watch this is because Yvonne Craig is just hot beyond all belief. She, of course, being Batgirl.
Batgirl, yes.
But
classic Batgirl.
This is one of those silly, stupid teen movies from the 60s.
But Mars does need women.
Kiss Before Dying is out again.
Which one?
The original.
Really?
Robert Wagner and Jeffrey Hunter.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Virginia Lath, Joanne Woodward, Mary Astor. Great cast, great film. That's now out. These are all DVD-Rs. You have to custom order them. Clark Gable and Eleanor Parker in The King and Four Queens. Not great. This is Clark Gable getting a little old in the tooth and trying to do a bit too much, but it's all right. It's a kind of a above average Western to middling Western. Wigstock, the movie, which is RuPaul doing what RuPaul does, before the Project Runway or whatever. No, it's the Drag Race. Drag
Race. I will admit that I did not catch Wigstock, the movie.
It's just a lot of drag. It is,
which is not a bad thing in and of itself.
No, speaking of drag, I am proud to say I was once kissed on the cheek by Varla Jean Merman at an hour when I could feel the 5 o'clock shadow right through the makeup.
Thanks, Varla.
Thank you, Varla. Miss Julie, the Chekhov this is Mike Figgis' version of Miss Julie, starring his then and I guess probably still girlfriend Saffron Burrows. This is a good adaptation. I'm not usually a Chekhov fan, but this is quite good and not usually what I'd expect of Mike Figgis. By the way, what's he done lately?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you think about Leaving Las Vegas and all those One Night Stand,
Time Code,
all those extraordinary Black and White, extraordinary film. Then Mike Figgis just sort of went away for a while. I mean, this was an Academy Award level director making really extraordinary films.
Time Code is. It's a little tough to watch because it's an experiment, but that's a really interesting, daring movie.
But it's, in a season when we're talking about films like Boyhood, that sort of 12-year experiment that he did, and Birdman in Inarritu, Time Code was way, way, way ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, this is
Figgis.
Completely different kind of a movie for him. It's a period film. It's Chekhov, but he does a wonderful job with it. Great photography by Benoit Delhomme, one of the great French cinematographers of the last 20 years. Let's see what else we got here real quickly. I'm going to try to go through these so that we still have a little bit of time on the show. The Monster That Challenged the World is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. I saw this when I was a kid, and I didn't like it then. I don't really much care for it now, but hey, maybe you'll dig it. I mean, Tim, look at the picture. Tell me that's not the dumbest movie monster you've ever seen.
Oh, look at that. Wait a minute. I think I've seen that monster recycled a few times. And the little girl doesn't seem to be afraid of him. She seems to... He looks like a ride.
It's just nonsense.
He's like a monster ride at an amusement park.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. Ricky and Pete with Stephen Kearney and Nina Landis. Kind of one of those cute youth movies from Australia. That's okay. Let's see. Pierce Brosnan and Taffin.
Oh, I remember that film.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
he was so young and he had so much hair.
Well, that was the film that made them at first start thinking about him for Bond, but it was actually the film that got him the part.
Remington Steele. Yeah. And we talked either a week or two ago, or a show or two ago, about The Bride Wore Black, the Truffaut film coming out on Blu-ray from Twilight Time. It is now also out on regular DVD from MGM. So there's a licensing thing there. Twilight Time got the Blu-ray rights, and then 20th and MGM are just spitting it out on DVD-R, which is fine. Not everybody needs to see it on Blu-ray, I guess. And let's see, Warm Summer Rain with Kelly Lynch. Kind of a little minor indie film that showcases Kelly Lynch very, very nicely, if you're a Kelly Lynch fan. I once interviewed Kelly Lynch.
From Top Gun. That Kelly Lynch, yeah.
No, Kelly Lynch from...
Kelly Lynch.
Kelly McGillis. Kelly Lynch from Drugstore Cowboy.
Oh, Drugstore Cowboy,
right.
Yeah, Gus Van Sant.
She was just a great interview. Just don't know what happened to Kelly Lynch's career. She just kind of went off the map.
She's got a lot of stuff in post-production, so there you go, Kelly. Good work.
All right. Well, she's out there somewhere. A terrible comedy that I always hated, Getting Even with Dad, with Ted Danson and Macaulay Culkin. I would just assume that movie have never existed, but it's out there on DVD for you. One of the many stupid King Kong rip-offs, Conga. Let's not... that's out. I mean, this is just truly madness. This is... it's about basically a guy in a chimp suit, and it's not a giant Kong thing, but it's trying for the whole sort of Kong motif, and it's a guy in a chimp suit, and it just looks ridiculous. It's like the Banana Splits gorilla outfit. Remember that?
Yeah,
this is the worst.
You can actually see the guy's eyes.
Yeah, it's terrible. A little movie called Attention Shoppers, which I had never seen before. You ever heard of this, Tim?
I do not know this film. Who's this?
Kathy Najimy was in this. And it's some kind of low-budget comedy that's not the least bit funny, but it's got a lot of interesting people in it. Luke Perry was in it. Martin Mull shows up in this thing. It's very, very kind of it's obviously somebody's catalog piece and sitting on the shelf somewhere. Mouse on the Moon, which is the sequel to The Mouse That Roared, is not quite as funny as Mouse That Roared, but it's pretty darn funny. Again, a Richard Lester film, but this is Richard Lester going outside his wheelhouse with great people like Ron Moody, who won Best Actor for Oliver, and, of course, the aforementioned Terry Thomas. A lot of fun there. Screenplay by Michael Pertwee. And then 5 on the Black Hand Side.
Oh yeah.
This is really a pretty terrific film, and it's kind of gotten lost in the mix. But really, some amazing talent in this film that just kind of this came from the blaxploitation era. But I wouldn't call this sort of a blaxploitation
Not really a
fair.
blaxploitation film so much. Oscar Williams directing that movie. I don't. But look, Godfrey Cambridge in this film.
It's just one of the a guy who was taken way before his time.
Yeah. It's so funny and just elegant, even. You know, and it's
sweet film.
Yeah,
really, really sweet. So some really great talent in here: Leonard Jackson, Virginia Capers, and the guy D'Urville Martin, who just
Glenn Turnan in the film. You can see Glenn Turnan. He's in that Don Cheadle show. House of Lies, plays Don Cheadle's father in that. Jeanette Dubois,
who I just
in this movie.
I just love Jeanette Dubois. Good times I watched for Jeanette Dubois, basically.
Yeah. And Carl Franklin in this movie, because we know Carl Franklin as a director.
Yeah.
One False Move and many other things. Carl Franklin was an actor. He's in this movie.
Amazing.
Fun movie from back in the day.
Fun movie. Whatever happened to D'Urville Martin? He's still around?
D'Urville must still be. He directed all those Dolomite films for Rudy Ray Moore. and a couple other things. They weren't great films, but there they were working, making films in the early 70s. All of these sort of black folks, African Americans, making films. Rudy Ray Moore owned those Dolomite films.
He did
on the day he died.
Yep. Which is pretty great. I wonder what's happened. They're not on Blu-ray yet.
Oh, really? Well, you would know. Yeah.
They're not there yet. So somebody needs to get those things on Blu-ray. I will never forget seeing Rudy Ray do. Basically, I went to see some of his films. He was hosting them live, and he did like 45 minutes of material for the audience, going up and down, embarrassing every single person in that audience. It was magnificent.
Well, that routine was very blue.
Yeah,
but it was so funny.
And then afterwards, he's out there hawking the DVDs, and sitting at the table signing them, and doing the whole thing. He was a machine.
The Ava DuVernay of his time.
Indeed, he was. I guess we could say that. Let's see. Tim, knock out. Tell us about some of those Warner titles.
I'm looking right here at Running on Empty. The also taken too soon River Phoenix with Christine Lottie and Judd Hirsch. This is a Sidney Lumet film. It's not great Sidney Lumet, from back in the day, a late Sidney Lumet film. Sidney lived a long time, so it's not even late Sidney Lumet.
It's kind of mid-Sidney.
Kind of mid-Sidney Lumet because he was around for so long. But we do get a young Martha Plimpton here. You get a young River Phoenix here who was really an extraordinary young actor even back then.
Yeah.
I think. And Christine Lottie. So this is a neat little movie. The Man with Two Brains.
Oh, my gosh.
Look. This was a goofy movie. I remember seeing it back in the day, but it was Steve Martin, frankly, at his sort of comic, silly best.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Jerk, that Jerk period. We're talking about the big silly movie period. And I really like this movie quite a lot. Carl Reiner directing this film.
Yeah.
The great Carl Reiner. You just can't go wrong.
Not his son. Not Rob.
No.
This is Carl Reiner when he was doing really some of his best work as a comedy director. It's really great.
And I got over here Joe's Apartment. I remember this MTV movie back in the early days when MTV had first started making feature films, and with the talking cockroaches. Mm-hmm. I remember this film grossed me out deeply then. I'm looking at it now, and it's still grossing me out. Yeah. Joe's Apartment, but I imagine it was probably a neat film for its day.
And rounding out my onslaught of DVDRs, here are the last of our 20th Century Fox Cinema Archives manufacture-on-demand titles. All kind of middling. Jack Oakey is always kind of a fun
Jack
Oakey's always good for a laugh. Alice Faye, always good for some musicals. And they are together along with Warner Baxter in King of Burlesque. We had a triple feature that had Warner Baxter earlier. This is kind of just Jack Oakey being funny and Alice Faye being cute. Not really anything else going on there. Lloyd's of London is actually an interesting drama about the creation of the insurance and banking company called Lloyd's of London, which we still have today. They insure most movies in the world at some level.
Yeah.
And this is a 1936 film with
Henry King.
Yeah, with Tyrone Power, Freddie Bartholomew, a lot of great people in this, and it's kind of a standard Darryl Zanuck production from the day. It's a little stodgy, a little stiff, but certainly interesting. James Stewart and Simone Simon, however you want to pronounce it, in Seventh Heaven. Again, kind of a middling Jimmy Stewart vehicle. He plays a sewer worker in Paris, and he's just trying to make his way in the world.
A little more Henry King there,
Jimmy Stewart is a sewer worker in Paris. Who knew?
In 1937, maybe.
Not quite what you'd expect from it. Orchids to You, kind of a minor film from the day, directed by William Sider, with John Bowles, Gene Muir, Charles Butterworth, nobody that you would necessarily really recognize, but it's kind of a cute little meet cute rom-com about a flower shop owner and a lawyer. And they battle at first because he wants to tear her building down, and of course everything turns out much happier. They find a way. RX Murder is an interesting film written and directed by a filmmaker named Derek Twist, who doesn't really have a huge profile to this day, but
that was put out as Prescription Murder.
Yeah.
But RX Murder was that the original title? I remember Prescription Murder.
I believe, that's a good question.
Yeah, there it is, late 50s. Yeah, Derek and Twist, Prescription Murder. Very interesting. That's the same film.
That's the original title, I guess. Anyway, that's from 1958. And the idea, it's a murder mystery with a doctor who moves to this little British town. And he finds out that all the other doctors in the town keep becoming widowers, like their wives keep getting knocked off. And he's like, are the doctors killing their wives? So anyway, the one interesting figure here is Rick Jason, who would go on to be on Combat on television and do a lot of really super cool movies like Day of the Wolves, which is a longtime favorite of mine. So always enjoy a little bit of Rick Jason. And High Tension. With Brian Donlevy, Glenda Farrell, another cool little kind of romantic comedy adventure movie, directed by the aforementioned Alan Dwan, who we talked about earlier. And last two here, International Settlement is a fantastically cool movie. This is a real gem with George Sanders and Dolores Del Rio. Which takes place in Shanghai, of course, all shot on a studio lot. They didn't go to Shanghai, and you can tell.
In 1938.
No, it's kind of silly. It's sort of funny, but it's about a guy who's a gun runner, and it kind of gets involved in this sort of kind of smuggling scheme, this fraud scheme. Anyway, it's sort of convoluted in that Maltese Falcon kind of way, where the machinations of the plot aren't such a big deal. But
the backdrop is interesting. That whole sort of Sino-Japanese warfare. Those backdrops are always so interesting.
It's interesting. It's worth a look. And then lastly, It Shouldn't Happen to a Dog. One of my favorite all-time titles. It Shouldn't Happen to a Dog. It's like, well, what should happen to a dog? Right? What should? Are you going to kick it? What shouldn't happen to a dog? The story here is about an up-and-coming reporter who basically runs into this racketeering story, and he's been basically moved to the science beat, and somebody else now has his old crime beat. Anyway, and you get a really interesting, kind of a really fun little caper affair going on. It's kind of a screwball comedy, not one of the great screwball comedies, but it's an interesting idea, interesting twist on the whole concept.
You can catch a really young Harry Morgan.
Isn't he? It's so funny when you see him young.
Yeah,
Harry Morgan's a guy that you never imagine.
No, you only think of it. I mean, even in MASH. MASH is 45 years ago, and he was already old.
It's like, weren't you 80 years old your whole life? Like, weren't you born an old man?
A fairly young John Ireland in that movie too.
Yeah, very fun. All right, Tim, let's wrap out with some television, and we've got some really great TV this week.
Well, look, the complete series of The Facts of Life. All right, I got to tell you, I grew up. I didn't grow up. I was an adult. Who am I kidding? I was already an adult. I'm trying to pass myself off here. I was a grown man. I was watching The Facts of Life. I was nuts about Tootie. I was nuts about Kim
Joe,
all of that. Yeah. And let us not forget a very young, very highly haired George Clooney. Was on The Facts of Life.
That's right. That's where he started, and he's so embarrassed about that.
Well, he shouldn't be embarrassed about that. I mean, the hair might be a problem, but other than that, he was really great.
You got to start somewhere.
The fact leaps Wells and all that.
Finally, it's funny too because Tootie, whose name
Kim Fields.
Kim Fields.
Yeah.
Kim Fields actually, when she was in college at Pepperdine University, was a broadcasting major. And I remember I had, Pepperdine's not too far from where I grew up, and you get on the local cable channel is the Pepperdine Broadcast Channel, so where all the kids that are like every Tuesday night or whatever, when they're testing their news reading chops, they'd sit there in front of the camera today, and they read you all this mundane stuff. Today, a surfer found his surfboard stolen, but recovered it in the adjacent parking lot. It's that kind of crap. It's just silly stuff. But I remember it's surreal because I'd been living in France for a bit, and I come home and I turn the TV on, and I was like, oh, Pepperdine, Tootie! and it was just weird. It's strange. Suddenly Tootie's on my college channel reading the news, and I didn't know what to make of that.
That could scar a young man,
It was strange.
The Office. Look, I'm going to admit something to you, Wade, and the millions of people listening to this podcast. Is that I never watched The Office. Did I? Now, I watched the British series, I know. The British series I knew, but I got really snooty about it. And I love that series, and I thought that I'm too good. I'm too in the know. I'm too hip and hep to watch this American knockoff.
Especially with this Steve Carell guy, because who's he?
And all that kind of stuff. So I'm actually one of these people. So I'm really glad that this is out on DVD. I can catch up. So we have seasons 1 through 9 of The Office complete series out on DVD.
Pretty great.
Were you a fan? I don't know. Were you a fan?
I didn't start off as a fan because I was like you. I was like, I'm not going to watch this American ripoff of this. But in truth, American adaptations of British shows have generally been quite good. We forget All in the Family was basically took a British show and made it better.
Steptoe and Son became Sanford and Son.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And Norman Lear was a genius at making those conversions. And Three's Company was an adaptation of a British show. So I mean, there's a lot of pioneering work that went before that. So yeah, I was being a little snooty, and I admit it. They made it their own. They really did.
It is funny. I will.
Ricky Gervais gave the show his blessing. He was a producer on this.
He likes it. He likes it very much. Although he says all the time that the nature of the comedy is very different than the nature of the comedy in the show that they were doing.
Yeah.
And we have here Game of Thrones to complete 4th season.
Blu-ray.
On Blu-ray. Came to it a little bit late, Game of Thrones, but I'm pretty much caught up. I'm certainly through this season right here. This is an extraordinary show. Look, there are these people who are big like Tolkien fans. And I get that, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and all that. I've got to tell you, I think George R.R. Martin's series here is far and away more mature, more interesting, and more engaging than those Hobbit movies. They just are. That's just all. Not to mention, this show is just a beautifully cast show. The great Charles Dance.
Yeah,
is on this show.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, you haven't seen acting until you've seen Charles Dance act. Charles Dance can be in some of the silly. Charles Dance is in.
He's also in The Imitation Game.
He's in The Imitation Game.
And that first scene in The Imitation Game with Charles Dance and Benedict Cumberbatch may be one of the best written, best acted single scenes of any movie I've seen this year.
It's a beautiful, beautiful work. And Game of Thrones season 4 on Blu-ray. If you haven't gotten caught up, get yourself caught up.
A lot of really great extras on this too. I mean, just gobs and gobs and gobs of featurettes and behind the scenes stuff and audio commentaries, and the great thing with Game of Thrones is that they always really, really load this stuff up because it's like the Lord of the Rings, like you were saying, Lord of the Rings stuff. They know that their fans don't want to just watch the episode; they want to watch an hour of a show, and then they want to watch like 16 hours of extras and not leave the basement.
Yeah, they want to see if they can put all that stuff together and make it all tie together the way it does. I've got here Downton Abbey seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4. On Blu-ray
to get y'all caught up, which I'm so late these days because I can't watch it because
I can't watch anything in real time.
I got the little girl,
and
it's so I've got to sort of watch everything late, and then sometimes I forget this comes in handy.
Very, very handy. I'm only through, believe it or not, season 3 of Downton Abbey. I've been watching it quasi real time on BBS.
Oh man, are you in for some amazing stuff?
That should be very, very interesting.
Ice Cold Gold season 1. Is an Animal Planet show. This is out from Cinedigm, and all these Animal Planet shows, I always kind of roll my eyes a little bit. But I got to tell you, this is amazing. This is about Greenland, and as most people know, Greenland is covered with ice. That's like the old joke, right? Iceland is green.
Iceland is green and Greenland is ice. They were trying to trick the Vikings to give them the other place.
It didn't work, did it? Anyway, this is basically about modern day prospectors who are looking for gold in Greenland, and it's really kind of astonishing. You think about prospectors in the 19th century. Okay, so you think you're going to go to California or Nevada and find gold. The old prospector jokes that with your pan in the river, and eventually you find a few nuggets, and it barely pays for the spades and the shovels that you use to actually get it. But we don't necessarily think about those guys making ridiculous sacrifices. These people are insane. Like, wouldn't you think it'd be easier to just get a 9-to-5, work for a few
job.
years, and invest the money and get a 401k? I mean, really, you think you're going to go to Greenland and strike the mother lode?
You'd be a prospector in Greenland.
But these guys are just made from they're just made from different stuff, and I don't know whether to say that they're crazy but you know what? They got a reality show, which is more than I've got.
Well, it's probably paying them more money than the mines of Greenland.
Yeah.
I've got here Black Sails. This is an interesting pirate series set in 1715. This is actually pretty good. I've actually seen some of these myself. It's very dark, but what really sells this series is the production design. They spend an enormous amount of money making this thing look as good as it looks, and it's pretty dark too. Game of Thrones lovers would really thoroughly enjoy Black Sails.
Cool.
That's for sure.
Sweetness.
For sure.
Stingray, for fans of the old Super Marionation shows.
Love my Jerry Anderson.
Gotta love the Jerry Anderson stuff. Well, Stingray is out again. You know, the Jerry Anderson stuff all originally came out from A&E. And A&E doesn't really exist anymore as a home video entity. It's all been folded into various other companies, and you know, all those licenses expired. So now all the Jerry Anderson stuff has been relicensed, and it's being re-released. And so if you missed it the first time around and you don't want to go and pay out the nose for something that's out of print, you're in luck.
What are we looking at? Are we looking at DVD or Blu-ray there?
This is DVD. And not on Blu-ray yet. I don't think they've made those transfers. So this is now from Timeless, who usually releases a lot of Western television, but they're a great nostalgia house, and they're expanding their line and in a beautiful way. And Stingray is great. I still think Thunderbirds is the top-notch show.
Thunderbirds are go.
Thunderbirds is the best, but Stingray is great. You know, it all takes place in this. It's all under the sea. It's kind of like Thunderbirds with submarines.
Well, I love the Super Marionation stuff, but my favorite Jerry Anderson was the live action. I'm a UFO guy.
Yeah.
You know, that's...
I love the acronyms, right? Yeah. UFO. Yeah. And here it's WASP, the World Aquanaut Security Patrol. It's fantastic. Jerry Anderson is like a guy who never grew up.
Yeah, no. It was fantastic stuff. Third season of episodes over here with Matt LeBlanc. Which is like a lot of fun on Showtime. I didn't see this series. Any good?
It's all right. I mean, he's kind of basically playing himself doing Joey, or playing Joey playing himself. I'm not sure which, but it's cute. Yeah, it's you know, he's got the persona and he's keeping it going.
All right, interesting.
And except you know, he's grayer now. He's more of a grown up. But
yeah, he still looks great.
He's still kind of doing the same shtick, and it's okay. It works. Season 1 of Dominion on Blu-ray with Ultraviolet HD on it as well. You know, I'm kind of trying to sort of get on the Dominion bandwagon. This is a sci-fi show, and most of the sci-fi shows kind of strike me as trying too hard. This one is really not it's not sci-fi, frankly. This is actually more fantasy than anything else, but it's an interesting concept. And we've had a lot of shows about fallen angel, a lot of movies about fallen angels fighting devils and demons and whatnot.
Supernatural is one of those shows. Grimm is one of those shows.
But this is interesting. It takes a whole kind of biblical subplot and turns it into something that's kind of cool and sexy, and might even be better for the WB. But the idea here is that the Archangel Michael and Gabriel are part of this, after the war, that's the war in heaven against humanity, and it gets into this whole kind of post-biblical mythology that's spun a little bit confusingly at first, but which sort of settles in as the season goes along, and you have an interesting alternate extended version of the finale on here as well, and it's worth checking out. It's Dominion, so future seasons will be certainly interesting to examine.
Well, here I have season 3 of Continuum. This is a Canadian series. This was an interesting series. I actually saw 1 or 2 of these back in the day. Basically, it's a detective from the future who is trapped in modern-day Vancouver. And aside from the fact that strikes me as funny, being trapped. I mean, being trapped in Vancouver. Can you really be trapped in Vancouver? She just is in Vancouver. But Vancouver is a pretty dark place. This is a decent series that I've seen a few of, but not a whole lot. This is season 3, Continuum.
The Americans continues to be a really
love that series.
Kind of an amazing hit, right? This is an FX show, and I gotta say, the thing I really love about FX and TNT as well is that they understand something that the networks never fully understood, which is they have kind of branded the network. So if you say, there's this new FX show, before you even tell anybody what the show is or what it's about, they automatically kind of have a thing in their mind. They're like, I know what other FX shows are like, so I already know kind of where we are. I'm 50% there. And it's great. And it really is. This is a good show. The Americans. So this is the complete second season, and we've got a new season that's just started.
Just started. You know, sometimes I wonder. You and I are from a certain generation of people. Let's say we're pre Cold War. We're Cold War kids.
Yeah.
We watched that wall come down. So all of these things sort of ring a little bit differently for us than they do for people.
But it's not James Bondy.
No,
it doesn't have that James Bond flavor. It feels like a more authentic Cold War to what we grew up with.
Yeah.
Not the movie glossy Cold War.
Yeah, not the Jean Le Carré.
No.
Cold War. A Cold War that might have happened in the real world.
Yeah. So that continues to be a really, really cool show.
I don't know this series. Maybe you can tell me about this one. Wait, it's a series called Banshee. This is the second season. Good Town Bad Blood.
Yeah.
Season 3 is just about to premiere. You know anything about that series?
Yeah, we've talked about Banshee before. This is it continues to be one of these HBO shows that they somehow know what buttons to push. It's basically, it takes place in a small town, and it's I don't want to say it's Twin Peaks like, because it's not kind of weird and freaky, but it's very much a small town that's filled with no good people.
Oh, okay. One of those.
Yeah. It's noir basically. It's it's Fargo-esque and all those things, and it's I guess maybe a little bit like Deadwood, except in present day.
Oh, interesting.
There's some of that. So, you know what? HBO just they know how to get greenlight these things that would ordinarily not seem to appeal to anybody, and they just hit a nerve. And this is another one of them. So that's a complete second season, Blu-ray, and very nicely done.
Banshee.
And then Arrested Development is back. And people haven't been all that enthralled by the fourth season of this. This is, of course, no longer on network. Right? This is now the fourth season's moved over to Netflix. Is that how this is going now with Arrested Development?
Yeah, that's what happened. They went away. Netflix came in, saved the day, got the series back on the air. And I don't know. I guess like you say, people are not as fanciful about it as they used to be.
Yeah.
I've got here a couple of remakes. Who puts out this series? Wade, I've got.
The Remake Rewind series comes from Mill Creek.
Mill Creek, really interesting stuff. The End of the Affair and The End of the Affair.
Yeah.
Which is really, really lovely. I happen to like both
Remake
of these films. Deborah Kerr and Van Johnson, of course, in the 1955 film, and Ralph Fiennes and Julianne Moore, and Stephen Ray in that 1999 film, which is just a beautiful, beautifully made movie.
Yeah.
I just remember the cinematography in that movie being absolutely extraordinary. And then, of course, you got DOA and DOA. That DOA.
The original is great.
The original is great. That one with Meg Ryan and
Dennis
Quaid in 1988. Not quite the same. So, but nevertheless, an interesting sort of remake and rewind. When a Stranger Calls and When a Stranger Calls. Again, the original is great. The 1979
There seems to be a theme here, Tim.
They just can't seem to get it right the second time around. Now, Gloria and Gloria. Gina Rollins' Gloria.
Yeah.
And, of course, Sharon Stone's Gloria.
Yeah.
Gina Rollins' Gloria is a fantastic movie.
John Cassavetes directing his wife.
Directing his wife with the little Puerto Rican kid. Gangster movie. Gloria is a mob mall who goes on the heel and toe with the little boy. Didn't we just give Gina Rollins at the Los Angeles?
Yes, we did. The Career Achievement Award.
Yes, which was a fantastic moment. I believe Angelina Jolie presenting that award to her.
I wasn't there.
I wasn't there either. That's why I was asking you. Man, we really support the group.
No, Mark was the only one who was there, and he was texting me during the dinner. It was actually, I didn't quite feel like I was there. I felt like I was in Mark's head, and it was a very scary place to be. It was very strange. But no, Sharon Stone didn't do poorly in that remake.
No, not bad at all. The Sharon Stone remake of that film, and that, believe it or not, was 1999, 1980, and 1999. Gloria and Gloria.
And then I want to wrap out with just mentioning one music title. I am a big fan of Air Supply. I admit it.
Yeah.
I admit it.
Yeah. The falsetto is a wonderful thing.
You know what? Air Supply, right out of Australia, they made a lot of goopy love songs, and I'm okay with that. This is the Air Supply Live in Hong Kong concert from 2013, where they just crank it up, and all these bands seem to get better. All the bands from the 80s seem to be better now than they were then.
They get tighter and tighter, and those songs are even... I'm All Out of Love. Are you kidding me?
It's a great song.
It's a fantastic song.
It's a fantastic song. And, Hong Kong is always a great place to have a concert, because if you don't know, I think there's a law in Hong Kong that says you can't be a movie star unless you're also a pop star. So pretty much everyone who's a movie star in Hong Kong will, for every movie they release 2 albums and perform 5 concerts a year. It's crazy. It's weird. Like Andy Lau, who's, big movie star in Hong Kong. When I was in Hong Kong in 97, I remember turning on the TV, and there's Andy Lau wearing like this velvet suit and women draped on him, and he's in some amphitheater singing songs really poorly before screaming crowds of women, and I thought, you would never see George Clooney doing this.
Well, it was it's sort of a
Tom Cruise?
A version of Elvis, I suppose. Only it worked the other way around. Elvis was a pop star.
Anyway.
And never did really become a movie star.
I think there's a law. Anyway, Air Supply is a wonderful concert. We used to make fun of Air Supply a little bit, even though we liked their songs because they all had love in the title.
Yes.
But they're all good songs. Lost in Love, Making Love Out of Nothing at All Out of Love. They're all good songs.
Yeah.
And a lot of great tracks here.
None of those people have as much hair now as they did then. Of course, neither do I, so...
And it's the one song. Is it Lost in Love where he holds that note at the end?
Yeah, that falsetto.
That was in the Guinness Book of World Records at one point for the longest held continuous note in a song, in a recorded song.
I had no idea.
And he gets right up there and he just holds it and it just goes and goes, and you're just looking at your clock going, what the hell? Is it broken? Is the record? What's happening here? It's not stopping. It just keeps going. Glass is shattering. Dogs are screaming. Coyotes are barking. The sun's raining. The sun turns to blood. It was unbelievable. It just keeps going. Anyway, so that's a wonderful Blu-ray. That is Air Supply live in Hong Kong. Fantastic Blu-ray with amazing DTS sound. I've said this before on this show. The DTS
can't go wrong.
DTS lossless. It's one reason why I think Blu-ray really is almost a format that excels less with movies than it does with concerts. Concerts on Blu-ray, that DTS audio, if you've got a full system, it just kills it.
All raw.
All right, Tim, that wraps our show up.
Excellent. Let's do it again.
Thank you so much for sitting in for Mark, and you will be here again next week with us.
Yes, absolutely.
While Mark continues to suffer, we will make fun of him. And in the meantime, please go ahead and send us emails to gods@digigods.com. Again, gods@digigods.com. And send us Vox boxes as well. We have begun to get new Vox boxes, so we always appreciate that. And as a reminder, please go to funofficepools.com. Go to the group The Digigods, both of them capitalized, and Gods, G-O-D-S, also capitalized, but a space only between The and Digigods. The password is Lars von Trier, all one word, all lowercase, and join the Oscar pool. And see if you can win it, because we're getting some great swag. Already have the Frank Darabont collection, as well as Boyhood on Blu-ray, and a bunch of great old classic titles from Olive Films, all on Blu-ray. We're getting a really great bunch of swag. So we will see you guys next week.